I'm thrilled that everyone's here today. I particularly want to thank the executive directors of the other VCAs for coming, those who have come close by, those who have traveled far. Some have come back from Washington, particularly to be together and celebrate the wonderful work of our volunteers. I want to thank our special guests for being here. I want to thank my board, who's here today, and my board chair, Peter Chitty. I'm just so glad that we've had an opportunity to get to know each other a little bit better this morning. But my most special welcome this morning goes out to the volunteers who are here. We're here to celebrate you and really mark the exceptional contribution that you make each and every day. Unfortunate that Lois Brown was unable to attend, but apparently that's politics. And someone in Ottawa has a little more pull than I do, so, she sends her regrets and has some special words from Minister Paradis that he would like to share with us this morning, so I'll read those to you. So Minister Paradis says, "Our government supports Canada's volunteers and believes in the work Canadians are doing abroad to strengthen economies and create lasting positive change. International Volunteer Day is a wonderful opportunity to celebrate the positive impact Canadian volunteers are having throughout the world." So straight from Minister Paradis. One of the wonderful things about the Canadian model of volunteer sending is the diversity of our VCAs, our volunteer cooperation agencies. This diversity allows individual specialization, collaborative partnerships, and a nimble, responsive marketplace. And I believe it truly allows us to service our clients in the best possible way. I'd like to tell you a little bit more about that work from the Kesso perspective. At its core, Kesso is about creating stronger economies and better lives. So stronger economies and better lives. I believe in economic development as a powerful driver of both economic and social change. I also believe in the power of experienced Canadians, the intellectual capital that's out there in our retired, semi-retired Canadians to catalyze that development. So I'm thrilled to be able to lead an organization that brings those two things together. Kesso supports economic development, private sector development, small and medium-sized business development. But we also support the development of institutions, local institutions like chambers of commerce and trade associations, and government departments from the municipal to the federal level. These institutions create an environment that fosters equitable economic development, equitable and inclusive economic development. And we do all of this through our volunteers. Kesso's volunteers are experts from the public sector and the private sector with, on average, 25 years of experience in the area in which they volunteer. We have a roster of about 1,000 of these experts. And they do their work through a mentorship approach. So everyone knows the old saying, teach a man to fish and you feed him for a day. Sorry, give a man a fish. Coffee. Even with notes. Anyway. Yeah, right. He's mentoring me on. Sushi's coming after. Sorry, so give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. Teach a man a fish, you feed him for life. And I believe that's what our Kesso volunteers do. They share their wisdom and experience with our clients so they're better able to meet their own needs going forward. So this leads to sustainable results. Like I said, Kesso was founded on the conviction that economic development is a powerful driver of this economic and social development. And today, as we celebrate the amazing Canadians who every day are making a difference and creating better lives around the world, I wanted to share with you My observations. I've had the privilege of being out in the field, meeting with our clients and seeing firsthand the difference that our volunteer advisors make. And coming, I guess, from a background outside of international development, it was a real learning experience for me. It's the difference between literally being able to open for business the next day or not. It's the difference between being able to feed your children on a regular basis or not. It's the difference between being able to send your kids to school or not. And these are amazing results. Truly amazing. So now I'd like to welcome one of our Kesso volunteer advisors to share one of his stories or his experiences, his wisdom. Mike Garrett, when he retired, he had a lot of experience, a long list of credentials that I can't do justice with the time I have today. Senior executive in the public sector, and including Chief Administrative Officer for the Municipality of York, City Manager for the City of Toronto, Chief Administrative Officer for the Municipality of Peel, Assistant Deputy Minister of the Provincial Natural Resources Ministry. That's just to name a few. As Mike has continued to achieve in his retirement, in fact, I have to wonder if he knows the meaning of the word retirement. He is the current chair of the Ontario Clean Water Agency, and it's been Kesso's good fortune, but more so our clients' good fortune, to have worked with Mike for the past 6 years. Thanks to his work, just citing an example, one of our clients in the Philippines, he's been working with, I think, over about 4 years, and now 13,000 people have reliable access to safe drinking water. And again, truly amazing results. So without further ado, I'll turn the podium to Mike.
Thanks, Wendy. You're very kind. Do I need to speak into this, or can people hear me? Just for the record. I just wanted to advise everybody that those people without ties are actually the volunteers. Those with ties are on the board. No, I'm feeling a little naked here without my tie. Anyway, one of the great highlights of my life so far, my career so far, has actually been volunteering with Kesso. And I guess, Wendy, that's why you invited me to say a couple of words this morning. And I didn't know that at the time, but after I retired from a very busy job, you know, I probably averaged 10 meetings a day, working with crazy politicians. You hear about them on the TV. You know, it was such a relief to work with people that were as dedicated and committed to and do their work with so much passion as the staff and the volunteers that I met here at Kesso. And in the early days, you know, you apprentice a little bit for this kind of work. You're involved with hiring other volunteers and screening out people that might make good volunteers. And one of the things I learned back then is you've really got to have people that are committed. Sometimes you get people volunteering that just want a free trip. And you have to be able to sort that out and say, how can these people actually add some value where they are? And make some recommendations, and they're in it for the right reasons. And I sure found that out, and I thought I'd just relate a story on my first trip to the Philippines. When I went there, you know, they'd made an application with all of the criteria, the kind of thing they wanted. And in municipal government, which is where I'm from, you're really a generalist. You deal with from flower beds to nursing home beds. So your business is very varied. It's quite a different role than the business world, typically. You're spread thin and wide instead of deep and narrow, often. And the mayor called me into the office when I got there and said, you know, that piece of paper we had to apply, the country rep did that, but we don't really want, that's not the problem we need solving. The problem we've got is we've got an alcoholic engineer. How do we deal with that? And that was the first challenge that I had, is meeting with the mayor on how to deal with the problem that he had in a most important department, which was delivering services, basic services to the municipality. So you never know what you're going to walk into as a volunteer. And one of the things that the staff wrote down here, and they're exactly right, is that our volunteers have to adapt easily to local conditions, understand what they are, and change on the go, and deal with challenging conditions. So it's often not a job for somebody that's right out of school. It's best for somebody that's been around the pipe, around the horn a few times, and can handle a few of those kinds of challenges. They have to be able to gain respect with their partners, which can be many and varied. They have to have a collaborative approach with partners and stakeholders, and they have to be able to give their partners a sense of ownership to the project. And not going in and saying, the solution we used in Toronto is the one that will work there, because clearly it won't. So I, as a volunteer, have been very rewarded, and I'm really committed to the Kesso model. The Kesso model is a partnership model, and I wanted to emphasize that, Wendy, where we have to put in something as volunteers. Fundraisers put in something in helping us with the travel, and the volunteer, the partner in country has to put up something. And I happen to think that that's a very important piece. I also volunteer with some other charities that don't do that. And I'm not sure you get the same kind of commitment, because you require that kind of participation from the partner in country, and I think that's a very important thing. So the rewards are significant. You know, my little experience was going in and making some recommendations about how they could. I used to be a water engineer in my years, so in my retirement I wanted to reach back to when I was much younger and do that kind of thing again. And I made some recommendations about how they could manage their water system so they didn't have this corruption problem. What they had over there is if you wanted water on your street, you only got water 2 or 3 times a day, and you might get it for half an hour, was you had to pay somebody to turn the valve on. So the little guys in the works department that owned the key were controlling things. So the issue wasn't really the design of the system. The issue was, how do you deal with the control and manage a system so that doesn't happen? And the mayor, fortunately, in that situation, was interested in solving that problem. And the big thing was putting in systems with meters, so they could have some cross checks about where, if water was getting stolen, where was it going, and then they could fix the problem. What was rewarding for me is going back, as Wendy said, 3 or 4 years later, because building these systems is not easy. You've got to raise the money. We don't come with a bag of money for them to build a water system. They had to raise 80 million pesos in a small town of 15,000. That's a big problem. So many of the municipal kinds of things I've been associated with, there's not a quick gratification. You don't just run a training program for 10 people and you say you've done your job. You come back years later, and if they've done something with your recommendation, boy, do you ever feel good. So that's what made me feel good, and that's why I volunteer, is because I hope that they take some of those serious, hard to do recommendations and do something with them later on. And in my line of work, that's been a very vital thing. So Wendy, you and your group, and Peter, the board, you have a very vital role to play in helping in these countries. We on the volunteering side, and I'm very happy to be a volunteer, it's rewarding. It's for me, it was better than work. and I enjoyed that. I enjoy that work, and I hope you're able to keep up the partnership. And I know Janet and I have gone out and talked to our MP and tried to drum up some money, and we're still hoping that that'll come through. And I'm sure it will, because the model you have for economic development, however the table is set for that economic development, because municipal infrastructure is important. A town, a city can't function without that basic infrastructure that most people don't think about every day. And if that's not there, then they spend their time going to the river to wash and do whatever they have to do, and they're not doing things that help them improve their lot in life. So I don't think we should forget about those things either, the basic infrastructure that we rely on every day. It makes our cities, our people, our population successful. And I hope that's a part of Kesso going forward, and I know it will be. So thank you very much for the opportunity. Rewarding is the business of volunteering, and I know you're all in it for that, and it's a privilege to be able to say a few remarks to you today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mike. Wonderful. Appreciate it. Oh, sure. So now I'm pleased to introduce to you Christine Campbell, Acting Executive Director of Crossroads International. Christine was instrumental in establishing Crossroads as a leading international volunteer cooperation agency, and I'm thrilled to have her here today. Crossroads' focus is in a very high level is to advance women's rights and create sustainable livelihoods for people in some of the world's poorest countries. Critically important, and we celebrate it today. So now I'd like to welcome Christine to the podium.
Thank you, Wendy, and thanks everyone who've made an effort to be here today. It's great to be among friends. And I just want to thank you for giving us the opportunity to share another lens on volunteer cooperation in Canada. We have a lot of different approaches represented by Suko, Youth Challenge International, Canada World Youth, Kesso, Oxfam Quebec, and I just really wanted to acknowledge all of the kind of partners that are here today. At Crossroads, our promise is simple to embrace. We're going to work alongside others as equals to overcome poverty and realize women's rights. And our volunteers have been working to fight inequality for more than 50 years. In a world where the gap between the rich and poor continues to grow and where the human rights of women in many parts of the world are under siege, our work has never been more relevant. Over the years, we've done a lot of listening, and we've learned that the best path to sustainable social change is to invest in credible local organizations that are best suited to know and to meet the needs of their communities. The challenges faced by our partners challenge us too. Violence against women, unemployment, and poverty are global issues, and Crossroads is cutting to the crux of these challenges. We're leveraging volunteer skills and expertise in Canada, but also in the countries where we work. And we're leveraging resources and networks, helping to empower women and girls to become leaders and live free from violence and to create jobs. Where we see a promising idea, we invest so that partners can pilot innovative, cost-effective approaches. This past year, volunteers have applied their marketing savvy to support partners in Swaziland to launch national campaigns with life-saving results. A volunteer from Mali came to Canada on placement to sharpen her skills in agricultural equipment design, and that's work that will transform traditional women's work back home. All in all, more than 100 Crossroads volunteers contributed their expertise and time this past year to bring us closer to a just and equitable world. And this International Volunteer Day, I just want to thank Crossroads volunteers and all the volunteers here today for your efforts to bridge the growing gap and to put a human face on Canada's development program. One of the privileges that I have is to meet and work with dedicated volunteers, and I'm going to introduce one of them to you today, Joanie Ward. Joanie proved to be a crucial link in a value chain of Crossroads volunteers who've worked in Bolivia over the past few years. In Bolivia, part of our work is working with coffee-producing families, and one of the biggest challenges that they face is accessing international markets. To address this issue, several years ago, Crossroads volunteers began by conducting a needs assessment with the families producing coffee. They went on to develop a fair trade certification guide, to launch a new loan product that provides access to capital in crucial stages of production, and ultimately to help them access new markets. In Joanie's case, she researched the Canadian market, identifying independent roasters who wanted a more direct link to their suppliers. And due in part to her efforts, Bolivian coffee growers supported by Crossroads have exported almost 50,000 kilos of premium organic coffee to Canada in the last 3 years. We expect those numbers to multiply. So it is with great pleasure that I want to introduce you to Joanie Ward, and I will share that Joanie has recently written her citizenship exam. So she's been a resident in Canada for 10 years. She has a very interesting background, and her mom's Malaysian and her dad is from England, but she's just the kind of new Canadian that we really want to invest and celebrate. So thank you very much, Joanie.
Good morning. I think I'm probably the only speaker for whom this microphone is actually a little high. Always the way. Happy to be here today. Happy International Volunteer Day to everyone. So my name is Joanie Ward, and I spent 7 months in Bolivia volunteering with Crossroads International between 2012 and 2013. And my role was fair trade and marketing advisor. And I was motivated to go to Bolivia and volunteer with Crossroads International, having spent 5 years managing a fair trade retail store in Montreal. So although I'm a displaced Brit, I've been in Canada for a decade, and I've been working on the other side of fair trade. And I was really keen after that time to experience directly with producers what it means to be working alongside them, and having advocated for producers overseas for 5 years. And so in my role, I was based in La Paz, mostly working with a microfinance organization, and then with one of their clients also in the area of Caranavi. The need in Bolivia for volunteer cooperation is evident. Rural Bolivians are some of the most marginalized. 1/3 of Bolivians live in rural areas, and 80% of them live in poverty. As Christine mentioned, coffee farming communities have faced great difficulty accessing international markets. So although there are, I think, 22,000 coffee farming families in Bolivia, very few of them are able to enter international markets due to a whole host of obstacles, but not least that Bolivia is landlocked. There are also environmental issues, financial issues, logistical issues. When I arrived there as a volunteer, I was struck by the sheer logistical obstacle, the fact that there is only one road leading in and out of the coffee production zone. And the road is called Death Road, El Camino de la Muerte. It's very ill-advised to Google this road if you're planning on traveling on it, as I discovered. It's hard to picture it, but imagine a vertical cliff face on one side, an 800-meter ravine drop to a river on the other. It's wide enough for one vehicle, yet it's a 2-lane highway. And it's the same distance from Montreal to Ottawa, yet it takes 7 hours by car. So this was no easy feat, jetting over to visit the coffee farming communities. It was actually a pretty harrowing and eye-opening journey. And so in my role there, the emphasis was to enable and facilitate connections. So I researched potential micro-roasters in Canada who had real potential to invest in purchasing coffee from this small cooperative. We didn't want to bring people over who were just interested in a trip to Bolivia who wouldn't be interested in actually investing. So we were seeking people who were interested in a long-term relationship. And the emphasis was on micro-roasters, so connecting a small coffee cooperative with small micro-roasters in Canada. And after a lot of research, I was able to identify 4 micro-roasters in different areas of Canada. And Crossroads International invited these micro-roasters to Bolivia. And I was their host on the ground, translating for them and working alongside the coffee cooperative to tour them around the production zone. They met with the communities, had meetings, met with the families, toured the pots of coffee, witnessed all the different stages of the coffee making process, and at the end of the week-long visit, 2 of the micro-roasters negotiated contracts with the cooperative. So the impact of the project is tangible and significant. Access to new markets was established. New relationships have been formed, which hopefully will be long-term. And there will be almost 20,000 kilograms of coffee arriving in Canada in the coming couple of months, which represents $80,000 worth of coffee. So pretty successful all in all. And the number of members in the coffee cooperative, there are 180 farming families, so the results are very wide-reaching. And having got to know these people, it's really quite humbling and inspiring to realize the impact that this project will have. They're often large families with at least 5 children. They live in at different altitudes, so very kind of disparate, isolated communities. Just getting around within one community is very difficult. And just to see the conditions that people live in and the challenges they're up against is it's quite something. There were a number of different elements that contributed to the success of the project. I certainly cannot take all the kind of praise for all of this. It's a huge process. It has a lot of history. The groundwork for this project was laid back in 2006 by the first Crossroads volunteer who was there doing a feasibility study. Since then, there have been a string of different volunteers working there for different amounts of time, and that's gradually led to this experience. So I was just building upon what other volunteers had done before. And currently my volunteer successor is in Bolivia continuing the work, so it's very much the emphasis is on sustainable work, and hopefully it will long continue. Personally, it was a very incredible experience, and definitely had an impact on me too. I was really driven by Crossroads' emphasis on partnership and on collaboration, and I definitely felt as if I learned as much, if not more, from the partner groups that I was working with and I had to offer. So it's very much a collaborative process, and not always easy. I had 7 months, and there were specific goals and certain things that we wanted to accomplish, and yet I very much didn't want to impose a northern or a western way of working or organizing ourselves upon the people I was working with. And so I definitely had to dig deep, and I had to be very patient and adaptable, and it was a bit of a dance, but we pulled it off, we managed it. And the day-to-day of the work was not as glamorous as I think the success of the project might suggest. There were many, many days during those 7 months that I didn't feel as if I was necessarily getting anywhere, or that there would be any sale of copies. So I think it's important to note that that the results are very, very gratifying, but it wasn't a glamorous experience necessarily to be there every day. And let's see, it was such a friendly bunch, I didn't even refer to my notes. It's quite astounding. Thought I'd be reading this. What else? I'd like to finish by saying that I'm really inspired by the realization that as an individual I can make a difference. I think it's really easy to feel overwhelmed by injustices and issues that are happening like overseas, and I think it's really powerful to realize that we do have choices and we can have impact, and that there are some amazing organizations that enable individuals to make those choices. And personally, I'm compelled to seek out future employment in this line of work. I want to work in international development. I want to continue the work that I've been doing. And I'll certainly never drink coffee again in the same way, knowing how much human labor goes into the process from a coffee cherry to the cup of coffee that you hold. It's incredible. And I challenge anyone who enjoys coffee to do a little bit of research in that way. And yeah, I think that this is a real example of how volunteer cooperation is helping Canada to achieve its goals of private sector development. And I'd like to thank Crossroads International and the Government of Canada for the opportunity. So thank you.
Thank you, Joanie. Wonderful, wonderful work, and very articulate, powerful. Thank you very much. So now we will turn to the introduction of another leader of one of our important volunteer collaboration agencies. I'm going to introduce to you Claudia Black from CECI. Claudia worked with Oxfam Quebec for about 10 years, mid-80s to the mid-90s, which I had forgotten until I did a little research. Since that time, until about a year ago, she's been working at the World Federation of Hemophilia, and has, before joining CECI about a year and a half ago, was their executive director for 5 years. So Claudia has been a wonderful addition to our family of volunteer cooperation agencies, and runs a very unique program with WUSC called Unitera. And so now I'd like to invite Claudia up to share some of her thoughts.
So thank you very much, and it's a real privilege to be here. I'd like to congratulate the Kesso board and the Kesso team and Wendy for organizing this great event and taking the initiative. So, just to celebrate International Volunteer Day all together. So yes, I'm from the organization called CECI, which is the Center for Studies and International Cooperation, based in Montreal, founded 55 years ago. And in 2004, we joined forces with another organization that was also specialized in sending volunteers abroad, which was World University Services of Canada. And so we joined forces basically to run a joint volunteer cooperation program, combining both of our strengths and skills and expertise. And this partnership has now been running for more than 10 years. And so the program is called Unitera, and it's one of Canada's leading volunteer cooperation programs. And basically it helps communities in developing countries take charge of their future with the guidance and expertise of Canadians working with them on the ground. So Unitera maintains a network of partners in the field, allowing it to identify needs, develop projects, and select the right volunteers to achieve tangible results for communities. So the program operates in 13 countries on 4 continents, and we recruit more than 450 volunteers each year. So these dedicated Canadian volunteers who come from across Canada, they work in support of our local partners in the areas of economic development, health, education, equality, and governance. And I'll just give two quick examples, and then that'll be it. So just very briefly, in Mali, a sheep butter cooperative led by women significantly increased yields and achieved sales exceeding 30 million francs. So this was made possible through Unitera volunteers and the development and implementation of a commercial strategy focused on international and external market development. Another quick example is in Burkina Faso. In the health sector, 14,000 more people can now have access to health treatment and HIV/AIDS prevention programs as a result of Unitera volunteers working with local partner organizations there. Now, technically, we also have the privilege of having one of our Unitera volunteers here, and I just want to check whether she's here or not. This is Artie Kasia. Is she there? Excellent. So Artie's based in Toronto, but has been a Unitera volunteer, and she brought her skills and expertise to Botswana to work with a Unitera partner called Stepping Stones International, and this was last summer, I believe. Yes. And so with her background at Deloitte, Artie was placed as a financial management advisor, where she helped improve the organization's entire financial system. So taking the initiative to apply also to find funding, Artie was able to purchase computer software, and during her time with the partner, she trained the accountant on the new system while also offering basic financial training to all the staff. So dedicated Canadian volunteers like Artie are what make Unitera such a unique program. And so volunteers not only make a great impact while in the country, but their knowledge and expertise also ensures positive changes and development to continue long after the volunteer is there. So I invite you to reach out to Artie if you can, just to find out a bit more about her experience, and I will also be happy to address any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Claudia. Wonderful. My pleasure now to introduce the Executive Director of Suko, who I teased earlier about watching TV, and he's very patient with my teasing. Richard has been involved in Canada's international volunteering program for close to 30 years. Amazing background. He's volunteered for several of the organizations that are here today. So really knows international volunteering from every angle. He was part of a steering committee to establish the Université de Montréal certificate program in international cooperation and has been serving as an instructor and advisor there since 2008. So leader, academic, volunteer, hard to beat. Now as the executive director of Suko, his focus is on food security and economic development in Latin America and West Africa. Richard, thank you so much for making the trip from Montreal, and if you'd like to come up and say a few words.
Thank you. So, well, very nice to be here. I didn't realize from that corner that there were so many people here, so it's nice to have another different perspective. So I was asked originally to make a quick speech to thank Lois Brown. And therefore...
I should have mentioned he's very flexible.
Yeah, well, the title of my speech now, which is written on a napkin, is Plan, 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 and Roll with Punches. Right? And I think it's pretty fitting. I think that that's what you've done to get this thing going, this event. Thank you so much to Wendy and to her team and all of Kesso for having this event and for pulling it off. And it really is a question of planning, planning, and planning, and then wing it, you know. And I think nothing could be more fit for a quick speech about international volunteering because, I mean, I think Joanie gave a little bit of a testimony, which is very touching, actually. And one of the things that I think that we can take from that and from a lot of other volunteers' experience is plan, 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 and then just go with it. So here I am, I'm going to go with it. So as I was coming over here, I was thinking that I knew that Wendy would mention that I have been a volunteer for a bunch of organizations that are in this room. And then I sort of was thinking, it's like, oh, well, maybe someday in semi-retirement I'll come to Kesso's office. And I'll say, and I was sort of imagining the little interview I'm going to have with the recruitment officer at the time, and it says, so, well, I don't know, what can you do? And then I'm going, well, you know, I've run a couple of organizations, volunteering and development, you know, some upscaling, some downsizing, and, you know, and it's like, well, and then I just imagined her saying, or him saying, well, we've got a lot of people that have the same kind of experience. Well, we'll see what we can do. But anyways, back to the whole question. I wanted to also point out that I really appreciated the way that you suggested this event and ran it in what I found to be a truly collaborative spirit. And you took the time and you shared your space with a bunch of other organizations. And I think that that is also fitting for a way to celebrate the International Volunteer, the Day of International Volunteering. So that collaboration, I mean, really that's where we're at in this world. I think I could have said that a few years ago. Volunteering is all about collaboration. We need to be able to come together to talk about and to think about and to act on the global issues that are affecting us. I mean, there are just a handful of things that are going to be determining the future. There are climate change, demographics, food issues. These kinds of things are going to be dominating public policy, government actions, and I think volunteering. And a lot of the work that volunteers do and that the volunteering organizations are doing, even though it might sound like it's a little bit indirectly related, it can come up to just a few of these really major issues. And the work of volunteers and international volunteering organizations is going to be, I think, more and more important because we are not going to be able to find solutions to some of these problems by working in an isolated manner. I just came back, you know, so part of the Wing It thing is like, oh, you can talk about Suko, so okay, fine, I'll talk about Suko, just for a bit. I just came back from a fairly long trip to Peru. It was my first time in South America. I loved it. It was a fantastic opportunity for me to go a little bit further than the reports that I had read about volunteering. Not that the reports were bad at all. But I got to learn so much more. I visited people in their farms. What Suko does, basically, a lot of our work focuses on agro-environment, which is sustainable approaches to agriculture. We use a lot of tips from mechanical and organic farming, but it's not exclusively that. And we do a lot of work that helps preserve the environment. So as I was visiting some of these people and these families, mostly meeting with women, I would, ask a lot of questions in my broken Spanish, which would get translated into Quechua and then come back to me in broken Spanish and some elbow translation. What was that in French and that kind of thing. So, but I am gathering a lot of interesting things, and people would show me a little hole in this place that they had this woman, three women actually, this square hole in the corner, and I said, well, what's this all about? It's not a hole. It's a fridge, and that was Dominique. Dominique is a Suko volunteer. Dominique had done a little bit of research on how we could preserve our milk a little bit further. A lot of this project focuses on milk. And so Dominique had actually, she's a civil engineer. She works for Hydro-Quebec. She took a year off and volunteered for Suko. And she was just able to sort of get in there, see the kind of things that are going on, and try to think of some solutions, do some research on the internet, come back, test it, And that's really a lot about the way Suko works, and I don't think that we're necessarily the only group that works that way. It's sort of getting the feel, being close to people, getting to the feel of the things that they need, and what's going to work. So, I mean, our platform is also that we are working close with people. We work with people in their offices, their NGOs, but we're also in their kitchens where they're making cheese, and we're also in their fields where they're cutting down the hay so they can feed to the cattle, so that they can double their milk production, so they can actually make the cheese. We're helping them market the cheese, create a brand for the cheese, and it's all this kind of weaving in and out of things that are going on. And it's really been, another example is I saw this wood contraption that is actually pictured on the TV that I was watching. Sorry, I got started. And I said, well, what's that? And it's like, it's a hay baler. And I said, well, what does it do? No, I didn't say that. I know what a hay baler does. And it was just an invention that Mark, another volunteer, had made so that people could actually, and it was part of the big process of the fact that, okay, these people have started growing the pasture so that they can, and it's been amazing. Growing the way we do in Canada, the farmers actually grow their hay and then they collect it. But that had not been done before. People would send their cows up to pasture and then wander with them. Women would lose all of their time, or they would send children. Children could not go to school because they were tending the cows. And then all of a sudden, there's pasture and the cows are staying close to home, the children go to school, the women can do other things. They're making money because the cow's milk production is going up, they're making cheese, they're selling it, they're getting money, they're buying food, they're buying medicine, and the whole thing is stabilizing all year round. So it's a wonderful demonstration of volunteering, a technical capacity that we and our partners have, and how it weaves to actually come up with some fantastic results that have been major changes in the lives of these farming families up in the Andes. So let me get back a little bit to Earth, the Earth to this to Toronto, put it that way. The thing about the volunteering is that I think is so important, and the spirit of collaboration that characterizes it is that volunteers, and all of us know enough about the international volunteering, they're not in it for the money. And Dominique and Mark both have very vibrant testimonials about how it affected them and how much they got out of the experience. And that's really important. I mean, the personal connection is actually not a plus, it's actually what makes the whole thing work. And I think that is a really important lesson for me and for the rest of us. And as we go forward and as we keep on thinking of the challenges that we are facing, I think that we have to all remain aware of the important role that international volunteering and the spirit of volunteering in general are going to have in our future and in our future as citizens of the world and as citizens of Canada. So that's all I wanted to say really, very quickly, and I'm just going to end, instead of thanking Lois Brown, I will thank again Wendy and the team and Kesso for making this whole thing happen. Thank you very much. I think we pulled it off brilliant. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you, Richard. I think powerful messages. And one that really stands out, which is the comment about that personal connection the volunteer has with the client. And that really does, we hear that consistently from the field, that is a critical differentiator that drives the results on the ground. And I'm sure my colleagues have similar stories of volunteers staying connected with these clients months, years, sometimes decades after, because of that personal connection. So quite wonderful. And I have to say, Joanie, I will not look at coffee the same way. I'm not sure I can value it more than I do now, but I'm going to think more about water. I'm going to think more about cheese. I'm going to think more about the shea butter products that I have and all the wonderful contributions and stories that we've heard this morning. So it's my turn to thank everyone, to thank Peter Chitty, my board chair, my board for being here, our special guests, my colleagues, the executive directors of the other volunteer collaboration agencies, and of course, again, our volunteers, the ones that are here today, the ones that are out in the field, to celebrate everyone for the amazing contributions that they give to the world each and every day, and truly creating better lives around the world. And I guess I can't thank them enough for sharing their wisdom, their knowledge, their hearts. It's really truly a wonderful thing to do. So that ends the formal part of this morning. I invite you to help yourself. There's more coffee, and more food, and take a few minutes to have a conversation with someone perhaps you don't know about their individual contribution to our collective efforts. Thank you very much.